Hey everybody, this is Robert from Black Belt Gaming. I'm jumping into a new series here I've wanted to do personally for a while, and that is, I wanted to learn how to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I've got most of the materials for it, even downloaded the free rules that are available online, and have read those over, although I must say I've read them rather quickly. But I am an experienced Dungeons & Dragons player, so I am anticipating being able to pick it up pretty quickly. But as a primarily a solo YouTuber, allegedly the first solo board game YouTuber on YouTube, I've been asked about role-playing games and is it possible to play them solo? And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. It's actually going to be a crossover here between one of the Dungeons & Dragons board games and this new edition of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Much like I do with my other videos, I'm going to jump in, start playing, and we're going to learn as we go along. So I hope you'll join me. Let's get right to it. Well, the first thing you'll see here are components used from Dungeon Command, these painted miniatures, and the Ravenloft tile set, and I'll be using some of the monsters from there. So I'm planning to play a solo adventure, maybe approximately, well, it's going to be a minimum of about 3 encounters. It may go a little longer than that, but I'm using the characters, the pre-made characters from the starter set, and there are 5. Looking at the miniatures, you'll see that we have a halfling rogue with a criminal background. We have a human fighter, a folk hero background. He's going to be this one here with the bow. We also have a wizard, a high elf wizard with an acolyte background. So that's going to be our wizard there with the white hair. We have a dwarf, a hill dwarf cleric. This is our cleric here with a soldier background. And then we have another human fighter in the back, and this fighter, a little different from this one, it has a noble background. So we're not going to worry a whole lot about names and backstory and all of that. We're just going to jump into getting these pre-made characters into action, testing out the rules, but to be a little bit in spirit with actually both the board game and the role-playing game. What's our story? What's our motivation? What's our objective? So we're going to pull that from the board game. One of the earliest adventures in the book, it's actually Adventure 2, is called Find the Icon of Ravenloft. And basically you see the text here. You would read this before you start the adventure. There's a cleric in Barovia who has told you about this legend of the icon of Ravenloft. He believes this artifact still exists, and it's hidden deep under the castle. And he wants you to find it and bring it back so he can use its power to help defend the town from Strahd and his minions. So what you've got are corridors and darkness and an army of monsters between you and the artifact, but that's what our party is there to do. Technically not in combat right now. This will be a little different from the board game. We're not going to be so worried about counting spaces right now. So we're going to move the party along. However, we're going to have our halfling rogue work as a scout. And we're going to have the halfling rogue start checking things out first. So I think what we'll do is maybe we'll have the halfling rogue come down the steps and start to explore in this direction. So the intention here is not to be noticed, to try to move quietly, hide in the shadows, and sort of scout ahead of the rest of the party. I've set up the tiles here that I'm going to use for the game. I'm going to be drawing from these, and let's jump right to it. We've got a white triangle here, so looking off in this direction, we don't currently see a monster, and this is my house rule here for my solo play. If I get a white triangle, it means that a monster is not necessarily having a lair here or any sort of hangout here. However, there's still a chance of a wandering monster. Wandering monsters are a great part of the old school D&D, and you just never knew what was around the next corner or what could be coming up behind you. So I've set up a stack of tiles here. 7 of these tiles are basically blank and 3 have a monster on them. So we've got about a 30% chance to find and encounter a wandering monster. Let's see if we find one. And we do. We've encountered a wandering monster on this tile. Now I've got some cards here pulled from the set that I thought would be appropriate. These are all from the Ravenloft game. And I'm just going to shuffle these up, and I'm not even going to look at them. I'm in fact going to draw one without paying a lot of attention to it, whether it has a brown back or a gray back. And I'm just going to pull one out and see what we get. Interesting, we've got an alarm. So that would be fitting, I guess, kind of near the start tile. The flavor text says, "The distant clatter of bells echoes through the crypts, drawing monsters out of their lairs to attack." Well, what I had in mind when I chose this card was to set some sort of trap. And I think what we'll need to do, instead of having this sound immediately, since we've got our rogue here, is to give him a chance to see if he can spot this trap and avoid the alarm. I also thought along with the alarm there may be some sort of trap-like mechanism, and I'm going to be pulling from the Dungeon Master's Guide for that. But first, why don't we see if we can avoid the trouble, spot the trouble without setting off the alarm. For this alarm, I thought it might be good to go with a sample trap from the Dungeon Master's Guide called Falling Net. So I thought it might be cool to have a net fall down based on a tripwire, and along with that set off an alarm. So what we've got here is a tripwire that's 3 inches off the ground and stretches between 2 columns or trees. It's hidden, perhaps it's dark down here, and to spot this trap we're going to need a DC of 10. So it's going to be a spot check with a DC of 10. Well, I believe here to spot the net trap we're going to need to make a perception check. So it is 0. So whatever we roll on the die is what we're going to come up with. So we need to get a 10 or better, and we rolled a 1. However, wasn't there something on the halfling being lucky? Whenever you roll a natural 1 on an attack, ability check, saving throw, you can re-roll the die and must use the new roll. So our rogue is a halfling and quite lucky. Let's give that another shot, and we've got a 12. That is better. That is enough to spot the trap. So what do we do now? Right, spotted just looked in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's a DC of 15, and it's a dexterity check. And it's going to be using something that the rogue is proficient with, which is thieves' tools. So I'm going to assume that that's in it's in the thieves' inventory. I think this is the inventory here. Equipment, thieves' tools. Yes. So we're doing a dexterity check with thieves' tools, so we can use our proficiency bonus, which is 2. So it looks like with a dexterity of 3 and our proficiency of 2. However, we've got expertise here. When you make a dexterity stealth check, or a check using thieves' tools, your proficiency bonus is doubled. Alright, so that's going to go from 3, 4, 5, it's going to go up to 7. So we're going to roll the d20 and add 7. We rolled a 2. That is not good enough. That's only going to total a 9. That does not beat 15. So our rogue here spotted a tripwire. I wonder here if it would be interesting to have that in another location, but We'll go ahead and keep it here since this is where we found it. So maybe there was a tripwire here. The rogue is trying to disable that trap and accidentally sets it off. So now we're going to have the trap and the alarm. What's happening? So here's the data on our sample trap here in the Dungeon Master's Guide. When it's triggered, the net is released, covering a 10-foot area. That's like 2 spaces. And they are restrained. And if you need to make a DC 10 strength saving throw, or you also may be knocked prone. So you can use your action to make a strength check to free yourself. Or I guess you can attack the net. It has AC of 10 and 20 hit points. Dealing 5 slashing damage to the net destroys a 5-foot section of it. So, let's see what we can do. We're going to try to save here and not be knocked down. That's not good. Our halfling has a -1 to this check. We've rolled a 14 though. -1 is 13, so our rogue actually manages to stay on his feet. He's not prone. So the net falls down on top of the rogue. Thankfully, since he was scouting ahead, the rest of the party is not affected, although we're going to assume here now that the alarm is set off and that a monster will be coming to this location. So we're going to let the other party members take an action, and then we'll have a monster come. And then we'll probably enter a combat encounter. So, let's see. The other party members, we'll have our fighter move over here and maybe attempt, after his move action, you basically, in the rules that I'm using, you get a move action and a standard action. And then there's some other things you can tie in to your actions, like drawing your sword or switching weapons or that kind of thing. So he's going to pull out a blade of some type. I wonder what he has. Let's see on his character sheet. This is our folk hero. This is the equipment list. Well, we certainly have a big sword that we can use. I don't see a dagger or anything like that, but the sword could certainly cut. So he's going to move forward here and attempt to maybe not start cutting yet, but maybe just trying to free the halfling from the rope net. That's going to be a DC of 10 strength check, and this fighter is going to have a better chance at +2. So I think it's just a basic strength check, right? DC is saving throw, strength check. So it looks like +2. I wondered if there was anything about... No, I think that's it. So let's just see what we can do here. Adding 2 to the roll. We rolled a 13. Adding 2 is 15. That's enough. The fighter rushes up and is able to pull off the net off of the rogue halfling. So the alarm is sounding. What could that alarm be? Perhaps it was a big sack of bones suspended up in the ceiling, and all of a sudden it is tilted or torn open, and these bones just start clattering down to the floor, alerting any monsters that are nearby. So these two have taken their actions and are done. The rest of the party now is probably going to get themselves ready. So we're going to have our rogue here ready with his sword. Our fighter is also ready with his sword, even though his figure has a bow. The others probably need to move into some sort of formation or position. So our wizard's going to scurry over this way, our cleric's going to stay there, and our other fighter is going to move up to the front line to try to help and protect the rogue. Not sure which way the monster may be coming, but it's going to be attracted to this space. So there's a good chance it's going to be coming from down in one of these two areas. Alright, so let's see what kind of monster we get here. We're going to draw a card, and wolves have been alerted to the noise from the alarm. So wolves are going to show up, and I guess I'll randomly determine from which direction. This could be a way. Maybe we'll discern whether it's this tile attacking on the start tile. So 50-50 there. Let's just do a die roll. Actually, I want to give it a few more points here. Let's go 1 to 13 and then anything over that. I rolled a 14, so it's actually going to be coming from this direction somewhere. Alright, so the wolves maybe are going to start rushing up from over here somewhere. Let's get their figures and place them on the board. For an encounter with the wolves, how am I going to run encounters? Well, I'm certainly not going to use this data. That's for the board game. So all I know is that there is a wolf encounter. We need to reference the DM guide about building an encounter to do that. So let's take a brief look at that.